to the specific class or category of persons and offenses in question, ordinary courts are not in position to undertake such trial. He added and said, under H, make provision in the UPDF Act for appeal from military courts and tribunals corresponding to appeals in ordinary courts. The NRM caucus met last Friday, and some of the resolutions made. Resolution 1, to support the proposed amendments to the UPDF Act as presented by the Honorable Attorney General with the following broad principles. 1, that misconduct by serving military personnel be tried in the first instance by the military courts martial with the right of appeal through the civilian courts. 2, that civilians who acquire specified firearms illegally be tried by the military courts martial in the first instance with the right of appeal through the civilian courts. 3, that provision be made to provide for rights of appeal from decisions of courts martial to civilian courts. Those are the 3 essential recommendations of the NRM caucus, and they were shared by Dennis Hamson Obua, who's the government chief whip and chairperson NRM parliamentary caucus. Let's start with you, Brandon. You attended the caucus meeting. I have seen you, I saw you briefing the media on the resolutions that came out. Is this all you discussed regarding these proposed amendments? The bill has been withdrawn, so you're not working with the bill, but you're working broadly with...
Actually, I sit on the Committee of Defense and Internal Affairs in Parliament.
Yes.
And already that bill was before us for amendments. So when the Supreme Court ruling came, then things changed. But you have rightly read it. And I think the most contentious statement in there is about the civilian. We did not go to Entebbe to alter. We are very much aware about that, the provision of 92, about what it talks about the ruling and Parliament. So we simply went as members of the NRM to put in line the recommendations of the Supreme Court. Actually, since Parliament was recommended to do so, we would expect the rest of our colleagues in the FDC, in NUP, in DP also to caucus the same. Because at the end of the day, Parliament does not sit in Entebbe. We went because this was actually an extraordinary caucus following our routine caucuses that we have every first Friday of the month. And the issue of civilian, you have rightly, Charles, read it. But when our colleagues are talking, they don't expound. They will just say, the NRM members of Parliament went to Entebbe to put back civilians. But the judge, the justice, the Supreme Court, the presiding officer read it, put provisions. But before we would even explain the provisions, the political actors started busting it out. We are very mindful and very respectful, and those are the resolutions. We wanted to have a common position in respect to what the Supreme Court pronounced, so that when we come to Parliament, when the bill is ready, because it's a public bill, in my committee where it will come for discussion and still understanding those details, the specific arms, but we also popped a question, and one of the members raised this, and I'll verbally say it. Say, now, if you're talking about civilian, if Ofono Opondo is a major general, and Brandon here is a civilian, we connive with Ofono Opondo, we acquire arms, we use them unlawfully. Should you only say, okay, now Ofono Opondo, go to the court martial, and Brandon goes to the civilian court, and it's the same charge. So those are the specifications. And then the types of arms, what kind of arms? Are we talking about a lipstick that will be suspected to be a bomb? And then there is no Parliament. The Honorable Dr. Matembe assured me there in the lounge that we have the powers. We know that. We are very patriotic and we love this country. So the misleading, the blackmail that is going around in this amendment with all sorts of words without even internalizing what the Supreme Court, they would be gladly appreciating us, the NRM, that we took a first step as leaders that bring business on the floor of Parliament. We took our step as we wait for our colleagues. Okay. And these were not laws. We did not amend. Like you said, we made proposals in line with the recommendations of the Supreme Court. So that's what rightly we did. These people should be here. Actually, I would expect whoever will submit after me to actually thank the NRM that we took a fast action to act on the Supreme Court recommendation.
Benjamin, let me come to you. I read out the recommendations of the caucus. I also read out the advice given by the Chief Justice. Do you have any issues with these proposals, and what are those issues?
I think the starting point is that the NRM caucus, and I don't want to restrict it to my brother Brandon here, is being disingenuous. The context of the Supreme Court ruling is that the Honorable Michael Kabaziguruka was being charged in the General Court Martial. He challenged his trial on a number of grounds in the Constitutional Court. But key amongst the grounds was that the trial of civilians in the General Court Martial went against the established principles of fair trial. It was unconstitutional and a violation of the rights of the applicant, the Honorable Michael Kabaziguruka. The Constitutional Court ruled that trial of civilians in the court martial was unconstitutional. The Attorney General was dissatisfied with the ruling and went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court confirmed the findings of the Court of Appeal, which is the Constitutional Court, that indeed the trial of civilians in the General Court Martial is unconstitutional. It went ahead to rule that the purpose for which that system is established is to ensure discipline in the UPDF. In fact, the court went ahead to note that even serving army officers can only be tried in the General Court Martial in respect to service offenses, but not offenses that are provided for example, under the Penal Code Act, which are clearly outside the service. And so the recommendation on which they are tagging now, which came, I think, at the tail end in Obita, is not a finding, but like advisory by court.
In case
that even if that was to be the case, it should be in specific areas. And I think the reasoning was based, for example, on the British system, which restricts specific categories, and it's also related to the discipline of the army. For example, if you are aboard an army aircraft and you commit an offense that is related to the discipline of the force, if you are a resident in a barracks because you are a spouse of a soldier, but also it must be in respect to things to do with the military discipline. It does not, but our friends here are trying to tag on that recommendation to reintroduce what the court found unconstitutional, both at Constitutional Court level and Supreme Court level. And I'm glad that he has made reference to Article 92.
Counsel, are you not speculating on that since we haven't seen a draft of that bill?
but
no, the spirit, the principle you have,
Okay.
yes. And I'm glad that he has made reference to Article 92 of the Constitution, which prohibits legislation that is aimed at defeating a court ruling.
A court ruling.
But I'm sure that the people cooking this thing know that eventually it will be found unconstitutional, but they know they will have used it to achieve what they want to achieve. You must bear in mind that the biggest problem with the court martial has been the way it has been weaponized as a tool of dealing with political opponents. In fact, it has not been restricted to that. If you go to the court martial, you'll find that there are even cases related to disputes between junior officers and senior officers. Because abusing it has become standard, even the other big people within the institution are abusing it to deal with juniors, but even with some civilians. That is why Museveni is desperate to make sure that this provision of trying civilians is returned. Just last week, or a few weeks ago, the Chief of Defense Forces, General Moores, mentioned that he can choose to take back Besigye to the court martial, clearly showing you that this is not the basis upon which people are taken to the court martial or not taken to the court martial is not the law, but the feelings of those that feel are mighty. So the desperation that we see, the urgency that we see with which the NRM caucus now is being, I don't know whether it is convinced, twisted to push these amendments through, is not because they want to align them with, to align the UPDF Act with the rulings of the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court, but to defeat, because they must find ways of taking political opponents and their supporters to the General Court Martial as a political tool. In 2021, we had hundreds of youth being supporters of NUP being dragged to the court martial. And what was the charge? None was charged with even being found with a gun. They were saying you are putting on capes which look like for the army, ambiguous as it sounds. Eventually, these people were compelled to plead guilty. There was another huge group that was, some of them are still in Kitaria. One of them has just been transferred to Ruzira Maxon because of his deteriorating condition, statutory Koyasin, because he has been on hunger strike, protesting that following the ruling of the Supreme Court, his file should have been transferred to civilian courts for trial, which has not been done. So these discussions and debates about the amendments are besides the point. The point is that the NRM caucus, the leadership is trying to, not the leadership of the caucus, but the leadership of UPDF and the country is trying to ensure that they create a new avenue of dealing with political opponents using the General Court Martial as a weapon of doing politics. But there is nothing to do with aligning with the ruling of the Supreme Court.
Pondo, can you pick it up from there? He argues the spirit of the amendment.
The leader of the country and all of us have been made aware that we have hundreds of the Karamajong cattle rustlers tried, convicted, and sentenced by the General Court Martial. Is that also doing partisan politics, trying to settle political scores? I don't think so. Unless Katana brings facts otherwise.
Karamoja votes largely
Yes.
NRM.
Yes. So, the court martial, we have been using it in the honest belief that it is inefficient, it is a fast court that probably doesn't consider the technicalities, the clever lawyers, both on the bench and on the bar, who represent the accused persons will use. But now that the Supreme Court has found that the methods being used fall short, they made declarations, they made directives. Is it an offense to try to realign? In the course of realignment, we may be overzealous. Again, we may even make honest mistakes. But shouldn't we try? If you don't try, then you are not supposed to be in leadership. There are people who have made an effort to disabuse the jurisdiction, the mandate, or even the legality of the NRM caucus. Because when we go to the caucus, they say, why do you take matters to the caucus? But according to the Administration of Parliament Act, but also according to the NRM party constitution, specifically 34, 35, 36 articles, it requires, it's mandatory, that any business that goes to Parliament, no minister, particularly if it's a government business, If it is a business from the executive, like this bill is, by the Attorney General and the Ministry of Defense, cannot see the light of day on the floor of Parliament, on the committee, without going via the caucus. And so, the meeting of the caucus to discuss various businesses that are coming before the House is an obligation NRM members of Parliament should not run away from, should not shy away from, even when we are being falsely accused. I think what is important is that we don't turn the caucus into Parliament, because we cannot do so. The Parliament of Uganda sits here in town, or wherever the Speaker may choose. Now, the onus should be on the other side that is contesting with the NRM. If you think that NRM is trying to play mischief, raise good reasons on the committees, raise good reasons to persuade the NRM position, or even to defeat it at a vote. And we have had many, many instances where bills come from the caucus. First of all, bills come from the ministers, go to the caucus, go to the committee. By the time it goes to the whole House, committee, it is completely different. Sometimes they even force a withdrawal, abandonment of the proposals. I think that is the normal discourse of a democratic dispensation. Even if you were to say the president has vested interest, assuming his members of the caucus said no, would he kill them? Assuming his members agree with him, but the whole House says no, will he kill them? Certainly not. So,
does he have at his discretion other ways to deal with them?
No.
There has been attempts to kill them. These people were beaten. Honorable Semuju here. They can testify.
Well, if you are assaulted, does not mean that the person assaulting you intends to kill you. It may lead to death, yes. It may lead to death, yes. But so you are using hyperbole. But the point I'm really making is the president has a legitimate interest. And by the way, in Uganda today, if we say the people who are armed wrongfully and are committing crime, violent crime, robbery, and so on and so forth, let us go for a referendum in a village and ask people, what would those people in the villages want? Since we are saying the rule by the people, I am sure most likely our people in the villages and in the country will say it should be an eye for an eye. Here we are okay because we are using the democratic rule. We have taken the route of Parliament. So if somebody thinks that NRM is being mischievous, is being bold, is being unreasonable, or even as some people say that the NRM people don't have brains, you who has brains, take that brain to the committee of the Brandons, take that brain to your member of Parliament on the floor, and let them vote that proposal out.
Doesn't the argument that military courts are more efficient, they are not bogged down by the clever lawyers, as you put it, on the band, on the bench, doesn't it fly through the window when you consider what NUP has been arguing, that
not just what
some of their members,
not just
can I conclude?
Yes.
That some of their members were arrested 4 years ago, and up to now they are still in a process that's not concluded.
The other day we discussed here
yes,
that we have cases before the civilian courts which are 15 years old, people in remand for simple offenses. But not just, we don't have to wait for, no. I have said, for example, the way we have handled some matters previously in the court martial, and I wrote about the one of General Kaihura, which was abandoned midway, does not give the court martial gravitas, in my view. And I have said on this show that the overzealousness will have overexposed an otherwise good instrument to ridicule that court martial. The overzealousness in that court and even from outside the court will have exposed the court martial, we have lent it to ridicule. But,
thank you.
But the fear of not bringing amendment is not the solution. For me, I'm saying, let the caucus do its work. For whatever reason it is doing it. The people who have good heads, who have the real heart of the country now, you come to the committee, urge your members of parliament, including the NRM ones, and let them discard the things that we think will offend the intent of the Supreme Court ruling.
Dr.
And
Matembe.
even in this amendment, the caucus has tried to distill, maybe not fully. For example, I have read the amendment. They are saying, for example, the trial of the civilian. They're actually making a distinction. They're saying, for example, if somebody acquires an illegal gun and commits an offense with it, that person probably should go to the court-martial. But if somebody has a gun and lawfully and uses it illegally, probably that person should go to the normal to the penal code. Also, this amendment is creating qualification eligibility which rhymes with what the justices said. They said, for example, the members of the court-martial should be the chairperson and two others should be lawyers. Their appointment should be in consultation with the Judicial Service Commission. 3, the members should have regulated terms. Probably, that's, in my view, those are improvements. Are they sufficient? If the people who go to the committee find they are not sufficient, then they are at liberty to improve the proposals.
Thank you.
But not throwing it away just because you suspect. If you have a bad president, if you have a bad CDF, yes, like you say, we already have. Yeah. You don't need a law for them to abuse the rights. You don't need.
Thank you.
The good thing is, all our laws, all our things,
yes,
we have remedies.
Oh, you've made your point.
Remedies.
Yes, you've made your point. Let's have other panelists also come into this discussion. Dr. Matembe, we're picking up on the same discussion. The decision of the Supreme Court, the amendment of the UPDF Act, and the trial of civilians in military courts.
You know, for me, I certainly agree with my colleague there at the end, Katana. They call us with these what? Wise lawyers or whatever? Clever lawyers. Why do you think, if Museveni believes in military, and I believe in legalism, what's wrong with that? Do you know why law came into being? Do you know why the justice, the court, actually, the court is the final, gives the final answer to the problems of governance and other things in this country. You have legislature, you have executive, but at the end of it all, it is the judiciary which has the powers to judge and decide and say this is how we should go. And therefore, our profession of being lawyers should be respected and honored, especially when the Supreme Court, the Supreme, when you see this boy, the Museveni's boy, and I also demean him like that because he called members of parliament crowns and idiots and crowns. He called them, and he's still there, commander of whatever. When you see him calling upon the Judiciary, Supreme Court to actually apologize to him, because he has arms, because he's commander of the armed forces. All this kind of thing really is the context or environment in which I make my presentation. Because I want to say that actually what is on the ground, in practical terms, I'm here to speak, to call a spade. Because we have a dictatorial, militarized government, which would rather do better in its own military when it comes to arresting people. Mainly the opponents, as he said, as my colleague there, the clever lawyer says. It is certainly true. every Ugandan who has wisdom, who is honest, who loves Uganda, would not come out and say that civilians should be put in military courts. Because, in other words, are you saying that our the courts as a distinct, separate institution of the state, it is the third organ of the state, and it is supposed to deal with, finally give, sort out the issues of these other organs, executive and legislature. And as you know, the military court, which the disciplinary committee of the military, is under executive, because the military is under executive organ arm of the state. And therefore it should be the what? The judiciary, even those military men, I'm telling you.
Where do you put
those military men who are being judged?
Yes.
Under that military code, they may not also be getting justice. They may not be getting justice
that's what the Supreme Court said.
Because the executive cannot give justice to itself. That's why there is the other arm of the state which must sort out the issues that happen in legislature, in judiciary, in case there is no agreement or what. Then there is judiciary. Therefore, for me, okay, have a disciplinary committee within your military to deal with your military people, and let other people go to the judicial system that is established and have their cases handled there. But because the country is militarized, Sabarwani, and he clearly says, I'm Sabarwani, I'm fighting, I will never win. Fighting Ugandans are now wanting to get the opposition, those people in opposition, out of the real court and take them to the executive there to be handling them there. For me, I'm not going into legalism here, it has been done like this. It is unconstitutional. It was clearly said by the Constitutional Court and then the Supreme Court. But anyway, as judges, these days every institution is under Museveni and they have to protect their jobs, he says. But in any case, he puts in any case, obiter, they call it obiter dicta. This, you judge and then you say, in case, you put that Kasumoro thing there. Now they have made it the major item and they are building on that to make the law. I want to say, these people who are making that law, I tell you, I sit here as a historical person. I want to tell them that actually, you go ahead and do your things, but you'll be caught up. The first Minister of Justice, my brother, the late Ibinjira, rest his story in peace, Grace Ibinjira, he made a law and brought a law and made it for detention without trial. Yeah. Do you know the first person to suffer under that law and his colleagues? It was him and his colleagues and Obote's government. And recently, for all of you who now here, Mbabazi, this Honorable Mbabazi, Mama Mbabazi, ran with this law to shut the civil society organization down, shut them. And he took it in Parliament and defended it, and he's the one who knows how it tortured him. And now he has gone back to bow there, because what can he do? He is bound to his boss there once again. But it dealt with him. Therefore, yes. I give them warning. Let them go and pass those laws. They will certainly deal with them.
You made a comment I would like to pick on. You said you described the government as a dictatorial military government.
That's how I see it.
Yes. Does a dictatorial military government, should it be bothering with calling caucus meetings to discuss and lobby members of parliament to agree with it?
Do you know, President Museveni used to tell us that democracy should not be in a form. It should be in substance. Being seen, acting and working. You people, you don't know. For us, we come from far with this man. Whatever he said in the end, he practices it. So, Museveni's democracy is certainly in a form. It is in a form, not in substance. So he calls people, I want to ask you, I want you to tell me, and I'm here to see whether President Museveni can come with an idea and take it to the caucus, and the members of parliament say, no,
Yeah,
we are not going with that. I want to ask you, were you part of those people?
Penalty.
Were you part of those people who censured the minister?
You asked some telling you.
No, a minister was censured in that cabinet,
we never had a caucus.
in that parliament. Wait, I'm saying things which the Mzee wants, whether they can be opposed and they don't work. We used to censure, we censured ministers. They censured the minister who is in that parliament up to now, and they are a parliament. Now what does that mean?
Let's go to
And you remember,
Ibrahim
they
Ssemujju Nganda.
also refused to endorse a certain minister, and he commanded they must endorse. Therefore, what are you telling me? So me, I'm saying democracy in this country, it is a militarized dictatorial government where you see army commander is saying we shall deal with you, we shall kill you, we shall what? And he's there and he remains a CDF and he's talking all these
But
things.
he says that and then the caucus is meeting the next day.
And what
and
do
it's
they
developed.
do? And what do they do?
Let me
Don't
take
talk
a
to
message.
me of that nonsense.
Let me take a message from Solomon Webale Arali. He's a senior advocate. And he says the main argument of supporters of the court-martial trying civilians is that civilians who voluntarily and illegally acquire guns have voluntarily decided to behave like and should therefore be treated as such. However, there is real fear that should the decision to try civilians in the court-martial be revisited, the security forces will mischievously plant guns on civilians for purposes of trying them in the court-martial. Does Ofono Pondo and the chairman of the NRM caucus expect, he's not the chairman, he's the spokesperson of the NRM caucus, expect any averagely intelligent person to believe that Besigye was genuinely in possession of the pistol allegedly found in his possession? Let the law be amended and planting guns on civilians by security forces will be the order of the day.
Yeah, he's speaking the truth actually.
Let me also take this message before Honorable Ssemujju comes in.
Right.
Yes, just one message. Much debate has and will take place. The bottom line is that the court-martial, in view of the existence of the penal code and the criminal offences triable thereunder, vis-a-vis the court-martial as a military court, could only, in my strong opinion, be applied in situations akin to martial law, such as during insurrection or armed rebellion, where civilians become combatants. The rest will be an overstretch of the court-martial with serious constitutional implications. Julius Ankunda. Ruben is watching us, and Ruben says, Ruben Kolbakanya says, idea of authorizing the court-martial as a legitimate court, the intention of the executive to pressure the other government arms to legitimize military courts is questionable, especially when considering the principles of democracy and the rule of law. In a democratic system, the three arms of government, the legislature, executive, and judiciary, are designed to work together in harmony, each playing its unique role to ensure good governance and stability. The legislature makes the laws, the executive implements them, and the judiciary interprets them. The military court, specifically the UPDF court-martial, serves as a disciplinary committee,
Yes.
similar to those found in other sectors. Its primary function is to maintain order and discipline within the military. Exactly. However, the executive's push to legitimize military courts raises concerns about the potential erosion of judicial independence and the rule of law. The judiciary must remain independent to ensure that it can hold the other arms of government accountable. It's puzzling that the president wouldn't trust the judiciary, which is an integral part of the government. This lack of trust could undermine the delicate balance of power between the three arms of government. Ultimately, those in positions of authority must exercise their power responsibly and avoid misusing it. The separation of powers and the rule of law are essential for maintaining stability, respecting human rights, and upholding democracy. My regards to only my Honorable Maria Matembe. That's Ruben.
A great statement.
Yeah, she says it was a great statement. Amos from Kagoma says, let O and Brandon tell us what is special in court-martial, not in civil courts. How many years NUP fans have spent in jail without trial? Tell Brandon to do it knowing negative outcomes. Amos from Kagoma. So apparently is your voter. Somewhere in Kagoma.
I will inform you diligently.
If he's courageous, why doesn't he give both names?
Yeah, you gave only one.
He doesn't want to end up in the court martial.
No, I'm courageous.
the
As
other
in
man-
fault.
Benjamin in Kampala says, please remind the panel that even the African Commission on Human and People's Rights ruled that civilians should not be tried in military courts. Benjamin in Kampala. Honorable Johnson Mugume, remind Honorable Matembe that in the 10 nominated candidates, President Museveni and NRA might be having like 3 independent candidates. So uniting opposition candidates might not help. In this case, that was our earlier discussion on Kawempe North. Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda. So the caucus has had its discussion. The debate is coming back to you in Parliament. Is it?
Let me give a background. The bill you referred to, the UPDF Amendment Bill of 2024, was a bulk document seeking to introduce about 69 new clauses. That is what was withdrawn.
Clause or sections?
I am not a lawyer, whichever they are.
Sections, okay.
That's what was withdrawn. In Entebbe, where these colleagues went, they presented them with a document of about 200 pages. If you read Daily Monitor today, the Honorable Mbatekama said we pleaded that we need to read and first understand before we take a decision. But the President instructed Chiwanuka Chiriowa to give them highlights. Being clowns, as Mohoz said, they went ahead and took a decision over a document, like they usually do with all the documents in Parliament, that they did not read. If you ask him the pages and you begin examining him, you will be shocked.
Try.
They did not read the document. Immediately they started saying amendment today, like real crowns. What?
Clowns covered everybody who is in Parliament.
No,
Not a
no,
section.
the specific reference was to his committee. That was the specific. But by extension, everybody. So they haven't read the document, but they endorsed it.
Like the Obote Pigeonhole Constitution.
Mbatekama said we pleaded that this document of 200 pages, let us first read, understand, and then we make a decision. They said, no, they will give you highlights.
But if I may help you, you are the one who had said the bill, Amendment Bill 2024, had been in Parliament, meaning it was with the members of Parliament, and therefore presumably they had read. The only issue was the issue of the court martial. The 3 issues which...
I am talking about what happened in the meeting.
No, but I'm telling you, they had read
The
other
document
bill.
they gave them was of about 200 pages.
In the meeting, you
but
did
it was
not
the other
attend.
bill.
I don't have to attend a meeting. They arrived there in the morning. Museveni saw them at 3. And they presented a document at 3, and then they were told to adopt it. But go back to the statement that Museveni issued after the Supreme Court judgment. He knew that a re-establishment of general court martial is wrong, but he said he will nonetheless do it because in Europe they have a homosexual. Didn't he say that in his document? That for you, how comes you promote homosexual? Even us, we know this is wrong, but we will do it. So these ones, he only invited them to validate his wish.
That's it.
And that's what the exact year will happen. Because even after the meeting in Entebbe, they set up a committee of lawyers. Up to now, they are going through a number of documents, including the Arms Act, including the Police Act, to try to find a best way of re-establishing a court martial without being seen. Actually, the word is without being seen, to undermine the judgment of the Supreme Court. And he told them in Entebbe, but some of these judges are also my friend. I will consult them and then see maybe how they will not get angry. So clearly what was in Entebbe was a mischief of Onopono. It is not that people have identified a problem that they said we need to fix, because the only recommendation, which is not part of the judgment, but just a recommendation of one of the judges that they pick. They made several other recommendations. What government should have done that the court recommended, maybe by some judges, is to re-establish disciplinary committees, unity disciplinary committee, division disciplinary committees.
That has been done.
And then leave the rest of the matters, criminal matters,
that has been
criminal
done,
matters to court.
And
but
that shows you haven't read actually.
But they read what?
No, that has been done. What you are suggesting of recalibrating the disciplinary hierarchy.
I have said that is what, that's the only thing they ought to have done.
I am saying they have done.
Because I am waiting when it comes to Parliament. But to recreate the disciplinary committees that were also affected by the judgment of the court, but also re-establish courts is wrong. And they know that what they are doing is wrong. That's why they are now speaking to judges, themselves speaking to lawyers.
How can you push back as Parliament?
But
with NRM MPs.
Charles,
yes,
this proposal hasn't come back to Parliament. So, even if the caucus establishes committee of legal minds within the caucus, or even broaden and bring other lawyers from outside, that's part of enriching the legislative process.
Opono.
Yes.
I have told you the NRM MPs did not read the document that they passed.
And you haven't read
the and because that's generally the conduct. Do I have to be there? I have told you. I have told you what happened to you. Really, can you inform me?
We got the document before. That it came in the
what
morning.
will be the motivation? So they will bring that document to Parliament, as usual. In all the, I mean, I sit with the MPs on the budget committee. They come and pass a budget they have not read.
Let me take this message and then we continue the discussion.
And then after a few months, they are going to begin looking. So I mean, I am used to this. But this particular one,
Gentlemen,
you are now like NRM MPs. You also haven't read it.
I have not read the NRM document. I have told you.
Let me take this just before we take.
They haven't given it to me, but I'm telling you those who interacted with it.
Let me read these messages.
Honorable
Semoju,
we will read for you highlights.
That's why he's talking.
Honorable Semoju and Ofono Pondo, you are the practicing journalist. This is important for us. This is important for us. Abu Lubowa says, I feel sad that we have 3 journalists on the panel, but the issue of the journalist whose skull was shattered by a coward Jat soldier has not come up for discussion.
That's what we started with.
Oh, please help journalists in Uganda to understand how best do we practice in this country.
Lubowa.
This is Abu Lubowa. There is a journalist called Miracle Ibra.
I never even heard about him, but I've
yes,
read
from works with Top TV.
The one who was assaulted.
Yes.
We shall follow.
But we saw him being tortured and suffering.
Yes, his skull was almost shattered.
Hospitalized.
Yeah, he's
They
hospitalized.
were stitching the face and on
Abu, thank you for raising this. We will, of course, we should have more discussion about it. There is also a discussion about taking journalists to undergo ideological training.
Imagine.
We'll have a discussion.
Is that wrong?
Eh?
Is that wrong?
Pardon, we'll have.
They are going to Chankwanzi.
Eh?
Is that wrong?
It's a
Are they
proposal.
going to Chankwanzi?
That's the leadership institute.
Mr.
Which leadership institute you also?
Yes.
Do you know why
let me take a message. Let me take a message from ruled against trial of civilians or enforcing that decision, and especially the recommendations of the Chief Justice to say, if you amend, in Ugandan speak, if you touch the UPDF Act, then you can still try civilians in military courts. The National Resistance Movement caucus met last Friday. We did announce on this show that they would be meeting last Friday to discuss those amendments. The original amendment bill 2024 was recalled by its sponsors, and a new bill is being drafted. We'll be discussing what this means, how far can it go, what is being planned. Let me introduce the panel that I have tonight, starting with the Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda. He represents the people of Kira municipality. He was elected into parliament as a member of the Forum for Democratic Change, but now is a promoter of PFF. He's the Shadow Minister for Finance and the Frontliner. Very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles.
The Honorable Dr. Miria Koburunga Matembe, senior citizen. When we stop there, she says, is that all you need to say about me? But she says, woman of God. Does that summarize?
Yes, that's good. Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers and you, my colleagues. I haven't been here for quite some time. I thought I was resacked, but now
very nice to have you back. I don't know if you'd stand the fire that we had last week.
No, the nonsense of Mwenda. Today I asked, is the Mwenda on the stage? They said no. I said then I will come. I can't stand that nonsense. I'm glad you didn't call me for that.
Ofono Podel Opondo is Executive Director at the Uganda Media Center. He's a frontliner. He comes from Chagwe, Mulanda, and Kapelebyong. Very nice to have you.
That's now a full title.
That's a full title.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Honorable Brandon Chintu represents the people of Kagoma County in the 11th Parliament, is the spokesperson of the National Resistance Movement caucus. Very nice to have you, Honorable Kintu.
Pleasure is mine to be here.
And last but not least, I have Benjamin Katana. Katana is an advocate and Noop lawyer.
Treasurer.
Treasurer. No, they call him Noop lawyer, but he's an advocate.
I can represent you as well.
Yes. Treasurer of the National Unity Platform Party. Gentlemen, let me get a quick comment, gentlemen and lady, let me get a quick comment from each of you on the ongoing processes to replace the late Muhammad Segenya for Kawempe North. The nominations have been concluded now. From what we know is that at least 10 candidates have been nominated. Some of the major political parties are sponsoring candidates. One of the nominees is a son to former President Apollo Milton Obote. Benjamin, can I start with you? Yes.
Thank you very much, Charles. Good evening to you, my colleagues, and all the viewers of this program. Indeed, the processes have been on, and the National Unity Platform is actively participating in that process. Our party candidates, the Nalko Lalimbaz, was nominated yesterday. Amidst bullets, amidst arrests, harassment and intimidation of most of our leaders in Kawempe. Hours before his nomination, our head of mobilization in the Kawempe division, Mr. Serviri, who incidentally had the nomination documents for the candidate, was arrested alongside other people, but were eventually able to get the documents when he was released. The candidate himself was arrested shortly after the nominations, akin to the events of 1980, when most candidates were barred from being nominated. It's only by the grace of God that we had him nominated. And I can say that since the process started, many of our leaders in that division have been targeted arrests. You remember sometime last week, even before the nominations, our head of the election management committee and the entire team were whisked away from their car in the middle of the night as they were traveling from Kochi, where they had gone for burial, and detained in Communicado for a number of days, and they were released without charge. So yes, the processes are ongoing, largely characterized by the trademark style of NRM, of harassing and intimidating opponents. But we are confident that we have an upper hand in that constituency, and that the violence notwithstanding, will certainly take it.
Who arrested your candidate?
Well, the people who arrested are from Joint Anti-Terrorism Task Force, which is...
you have confirmation of...
Well,
that.
They are wearing uniforms bearing that inscription. They are masked, so I cannot tell if it was Brandon here putting on that uniform. But yes, they are in state vehicles. They are wearing uniforms. They are bearing arms. and the people they pick end up in state facilities. So yes, I can
Who
confirm.
released your candidate and where was he released from?
For him, when he was arrested, he was taken to the police station
Yes.
in Kawempe and later released.
What was he charged with?
Nothing. Serviri, the one who had papers, the head of mobilization in the Kawempe division, he was held in a car and driven around, and eventually when there was a lot of communication regarding his arrest, he was released. Yeah, so we can with confidence say that the people that are conducting these operations are security personnel.
So he was released from a police station and was not arrested by police?
When they are picked and put in drones, they are dropped at police stations. Eventually, some of them are charged, others are not charged. But particularly for him, he was taken to Kawempe police station. He was not charged. He was later released.
Okay, we'll need to find some more information.
I'm sure you
later.
also saw pictures of the disfigured face and head of the top TV journalist.
Yes.
Who was shot by the same security personnel that were carrying out the arrests in Kawempe.
Yes, if you could, production, if you could put back that list of nominees for the Kawempe North by-election. Muchibi Sadat for the Forum for Democratic Change, Luimba Elias Nalukola for the National Unity Platform, Luemba Luswa Mohammed, an independent, Muberwa Hanifa Karadi, yes, independent, Nsereko Moses, independent, Musitwa Ismail for PPP, Kasacha Henry Mubiru for the Democratic Party, Nambi Farida Chigongo for the National Resistance Movement, Mutazindwa Muhammad, independent, and that's Maitum Edward Stanley, independent. Yeah, if you could pull it up a little bit more, it looks like there's another candidate missing there. The Honorable Brandon Chintu, your quick comment on Kawempe?
Yeah, well, the processes of nomination as arranged by the Electoral Commission are done, and we have a candidate there, Nambi Farida Chigongo of the NRM. As the NRM, we shall go down and stamp for support of our candidate, but we only call upon all the actors, especially the supporters and all the candidates, to respect the guidelines of the Electoral Commission, and we hope that as NRM we have a strategy to reclaim Kampala. So we shall start with Kawempe North to make sure we secure that victory.
When did the NRM last have an MP from Kawempe North? Do you remember?
From when I started following the history of politics in Kawempe, my history doesn't serve me any yet.
Okay. Ofono Pondo, Kawempe?
Well, first of all, they said elections, the by-election by constitution, when a seat falls vacant, it shouldn't exceed 60 days, I think, before a replacement is found. And so the process is in conformity with the constitution and the laws of Uganda. For me, I'm happy, I'm glad that even when there are complaints about the unfairness and so on of the NRM in particular, when we call out for elections, we have not had a case where somebody goes unopposed in a by-election. It tells me that Ugandans are willing to engage with the democratic process, and they believe that they have a fair shot at the game. I associate myself with Brandon. We have a candidate, Nambi. Nambi Farida ran for woman member of parliament for Kampala City in the last election. Kawempe North is one of the constituencies in Kampala where she scored highest. She scored 16,000 votes. We think that with what has happened in the last 2.5 years, 3 years, The people who were elected here, I don't think they have done much, let alone Kawempe, but NUP hasn't done much by way of legislation, by way of checking NRM, by way of what MPs should do. Even just speaking on many things. We think we have a fair shot, like Brandon has said. We call upon our NRM supporters to campaign peacefully. We also ask our competitors, because part of the things that the Katanas are complaining about, they don't want to say it on air because it would be an admission of wrongdoing. No people in that area and many parts of the country, particularly here in Uganda, where for now they say they are the dominant group. Their strategy is to intimidate, particularly supporters of the NRM, but also the others. You can judge this by what's going on social media and other media platforms, so that even these nominations, I think they had planned to disrupt, and police intervened. I don't agree with the police in being high-handed and brutal. They should have intervened within the laws. And to know that the police did not want to hide, at least in this case, they are properly dressed, identifiable, and by Katana's own admission, the people arrested are taken and released at the police. Yes, you may not, when the police arrest people, does not mean that all of them will be charged with an offense. Sometimes the arresting is part of neutralizing a bad situation, but also the process of screening who are the wrongdoers and so on and so forth. And therefore, we call upon the law enforcement people to use an even hand. No need for brutality. When you do brutality, first of all, you harm your own image as police, but also the government. And thirdly, you give the Katanas sympathy, which, in my view, they shouldn't deserve. And so we are going into this race to campaign. We hope we shall win for our candidate. Yes.
What do you say about reports that the NUP candidate was arrested, brutalized, and
in this race, I know 3 candidates. I know, of course, the one of NRM. I know Mr. Henry Kasacha, who has been our colleague in the media, and he has been promoting democracy governance with the Friedrich Ebert Foundation. I know him. I only met Mr. Narukora on this show for the first time. He appeared with us here about a month ago. I'd never appeared with him on the media. At that time, I knew, previously, I used to hear him as a DP lawyer, a lawyer for the Democratic Party. He's a calm guy. By all means, when you interact with him, he talks so softly. I have not bothered to find out why he was treated the way he was treated, including tearing his shirt. If it is indeed the police that did so, I think the police command ought really to investigate and issue a public statement, because Narukora is not one of those you would think is, at least to me, violent. But even if somebody was violent, the police has capacity to overpower. They don't have to tear someone's shirt. Yeah. My sympathies go out to him. I hope I will reach out to him in time to come.
Thank you. I would have given you time. Maybe I'll give you time later on to speak about the president doing the PDM tours in Western Uganda, where he is now, but we'll come to that later. Let me hear from Dr. Matembe on the processes to replace the late Muhammad Segni in Kawempe North.
I'm glad to be here to talk about this, because for me, I don't take this thing lightly. Like people are just saying, you know, very good, which very good. Because for us, we are Ugandans. We are watching, we are seeing what is happening, and we are just shattered. Because this is just what kills me is just one person, just a constituency. How many constituencies? How many members of parliament do we have? 529. And there is just one constituency here in Kawempe that needs replacement. That you bring in anti-terrorists. That you make sure the exercise is so violent, you arrest people, you do all this kind of thing. What is this showing us? What is coming ahead of us? If just one Kawempe by elections for 1 year to go, you can bring these people whom I saw on TV with black, I wish they could burn in their blackness. Eh? Coming and grabbing people and kicking people, and for what? For what? And why shouldn't they anyway? Because if I don't read Twitter a lot, I don't go on those things because they can destabilize my mind and dirty my mind. But at times people send personally something for me to hear. If I could see this son of Museveni saying that everybody wearing NUP uniform, we shall kill them. I mean, Ofono, please. Now, they point out that NUP are bad. They point out, for us we watched how they went into NUP and they vandalized the whole office. They stole all their things. They did all these things. Why NUP? Is it because NUP are bad people? It's because the government of Uganda, the NRM, wants to be the only. By the way, let me steal one thing for you. It has just come to my head. When we are making the constitution, in that constitution we put there systems. We said we have systems, movement, party, and any other system. I can't remember the article. When we were discussing that article, I remember we spent even up to 3 o'clock. We were there with the president who was saying that we should put in that NRM is the only viable, or the best, the only good political system that you should take.
Movement.
And movement.
The movement.
And I remember arguing and saying, no, we can't put there that. It was like about 2 o'clock, and President Museveni asked Yosam Tumwesige that tell us about this, because Mbabas was saying yes, and I was saying no, and I was resilient and I'm not giving up. And the president asked Tumwesige, by the way, is that right or what? And Tumwesige said, what Matembi is saying is correct. You know, that all systems are good and we should invoke them. So I think in that head, that to him, movement only must be. Because whenever there is any strong party coming on board, it must suffer. It is a terrorist. Its leaders must be tortured. I mean, we've seen FDC. Me, I was there when we were founding FDC, and it was coming actually. If FDC was allowed to, I remember telling the president, please, since you have lost on handing over power peacefully through the term limit, at least let you be known as the father of the good multi-party political system in this country by allowing these other political parties to build. He said, yes, I will do that. And I think 2 days later, he arrests Besigye, they put him in prison, and things begin like that. And now that they saw that FDC is no longer all that vibrant and all that, but there is this young NUP which it must be killed, it must be destroyed, it must be. Me, I'm looking at Uganda's affairs as a senior citizen who has gone through this Uganda. And I remind you of the first article in our constitution that, having taken into account our history of political, of our political and economic and constitutional instability, we are coming into a new Uganda. It is so sad that the President Museveni is really taking us back, even worse, by the way. For me, if you ask me which is the worst now compared to all these we have been, when it comes to democracy, constitutionalism, rule of law, and justice, if you ask me, this government is the worst. And I talk as a senior citizen who has no party where she belongs. And that's why I say, please, when one county, Kawempe just like this, and you beat people, and you kick them, and what right? Let me tell you, people, Ugandan listening to me, military is supposed to be under civilian rule. We put it clearly in our constitution. Why should military be the ruler of Uganda? Why should it be when it is supposed to be under military, under civilian rule? And in any case, if there is any disturbance, people are rude or something like that, where is our police? We have our police. Our police is the one which must keep law and order within the territorial of this country. This military is supposed to be watching out at the end, at the border of what is happening to Uganda, that it is not invaded. But when the military is used to beat Uganda and torture them just because they want one party to rule, that is now for general and the government and the way it is saying. And for me, really, I want to tell Ugandans, and all of you who defend NRM, if you, and I am glad the head of the caucus is here, do you know that it is your responsibility, you as the members of parliament, not the caucus? Because it is not the caucus of NRM that should be making laws for us, that should be deciding for us. It is not a party caucus. It should be national. But now,
during your days, did you participate in caucus meetings of the NRM?
Which caucus meetings of NRM?
When there are caucus meetings.
If you want to pin me down, you are failing.
I'm just asking.
Let me tell you, I was working under the National Resistance Movement. We were one movement, and we used to sit and decide, like I was telling you. There was Mbabas saying that, and there I was saying this. The caucus was movement, was the government, was what was. So me, these now, I call them caucus even. I call them caucus. These ones who go and kill our nation. But anyway, I was going to make a call and say, please, Ugandans, you must wake up, and you parliamentarians, you must be honest and be truthful and speak out. You are the one who has the powers. The president is not supposed to order you, do this, do that. No. In fact, you have, by the way, powers over the president, because you have a right to impeach him, and yet he has no right to. You know, we made sure the previous government, in the previous governments, the president could dissolve parliament. For us, we said no. Parliament represents all people of Uganda. The president is one person, the parliament are many. He has no right to dissolve parliament. But the parliament should have a right to vote to remove him if he's not going according to people's views. But now, everybody has bowed. But anyway, let me finish and saying it is completely unfortunate, and it is, I have lost the word I wanted to say, but it is a precursor. This Kawempe thing, the word has come. It is a precursor. It is showing you, wait, what is coming.
We'll wait and see what happens over the next 2 weeks.
And then my last thing is to the parties themselves who are contesting. We've been telling these people. Now, why 10 people for what? This greed. This greed to get into power and do nothing but earn money. These parties, I saw them listed there. Why shouldn't they combine and bring one candidate? I know, what, all this nonsense. Because it is all about stomach, it is all about self, it is all about. Therefore, I'm also telling you, multi-parties, you are also as maybe, let me keep my word. There's no difference between you and you are all parties anyway, hopeless parties that are leading. Leave Matemba alone.
I don't want someone to be only an observer.
Correction, when we were in the CA, I was there, I wasn't a delegate, but I remember very well. The NRM had a caucus, and the Agua Waters had a caucus called the National Caucus, For multi-party, yes. When we had the 6th Parliament, we were still under the movement system. And I remember the movement side had a caucus. And the multi-parties, as we called them, had a caucus. So caucusing is not a new thing. Honorable Matembe, you were a member.
If
of
they
the
were
NRM,
caucus, they were
you are
caucus
member-
and not caucus.
Yes,
like yours.
and you have just said here that President Museveni had no direct role in the constitutional making process.
What?
Had no direct role, at least according to the law. You met him during the constitutional making process. So clearly, President Museveni has had interest in the constitutional making and legal making of Uganda.
So what is that?
I'm saying it is
Who
not
says
new.
he hasn't been?
The Honorable Ibrahim Sebujuganda, I need your comment because we
Who
need to move
said
on to
nothing?
discussing the amendments to the UPDF
Just
Act.
want to talk about Martin.
No, but you had the caucus.
I-
You have a you don't have a candidate.
Why did they caucus?
Do you have a candidate in Kawempe?
We are not yet a registered political party participating in elections, but one of our promoters is contesting in Kawempe North as independent. You see, the brutality that took place yesterday is a reflection of the general political environment in the country. Dr. Wesje is in Ruzira. I was in court this week. Ingrid Nawe, Doreen Nyanjura, the deputy mayor, and others from our group were arrested protesting a continued detention of Dr. Wesje. They were not produced in court because prison said, we are not returning you to court in the same T-shirts you came wearing, because they arrested them wearing T-shirts with words, kill Miss Peya Besigye. They said those ones are political statements. We cannot drive you in our vehicles to court. I asked the court out of anger, the people you drove to Ruzira in these T-shirts, why don't you return them to court in the same T-shirts? They said we have a donation of clothes, they need to remove them. And the magistrate there, forgotten her name, remanded them for another 2 weeks. Yes, they are still in Ruzira. The raiding of the NUP headquarters, the arresting of NUP supporters and some leaders. So we are under terror. And I think the right group to be taken to Kawempe to continue with the general terror in the country was JAT. If they took their police, they would be stupid. Because if you are raiding headquarters of political parties, you are arresting people for putting on T-shirts. Dr. Wesje is in Ruzira even after the court judgment. That's what you have established now as conditions in the country. So if you want to spread them, you look at you identify the right agent or agents of the state that will do it proper. And I want to thank Jat, they really did a good job. The way they were beating anyone who is ignorant about Uganda now must really have learned that this Uganda, if you didn't know, this is how it looks like under Museveni who went to Luwero to fight for elections.
That's on the part of the government. But Dr. Matembe challenged you and said, why do you have so many candidates running in...
For me, I don't have a problem. I don't have a
why
problem.
have 10? I mean, they've already been nominated,
Yes.
meaning that you as players in the political opposition haven't had a discussion on how you manage that by-election.
I don't have a problem with every political party presenting a candidate. I have contested the elections 3 times now. And all the parties, except NUP, which is new, appeared in the last election. All the parties have fielded candidates against me and against any other person here. But in many constituencies, the voters will choose 1 or 2 candidates. The rest will be participants. And they have had the mechanism to do so.
But
He will tell you where they have MPs.
You appreciate
The
concerns.
FDC presented candidates. The the preference is for the opposition to be one, but it is not, and it will not be one.
Why?
It will be, all these parties will exist, and that's why we are under multi-party dispensation. If they choose, like they have done in some constituencies, it pleases me, but I cannot guarantee that in every constituency you will have the opposition. What bothers me are the conditions. But even if they bring 1,000 candidates, like in Nigeria, one time they had a presidential election with 80 pages, with a ballot paper of 80 pages, because the people who are contesting were about 200 and something. That doesn't, what bothers me is what the state is doing.
Why shouldn't it bother you? Because people say failure to have a united front as opposition players undermines the chances of the opposition to overwhelm.
I have told you, if you are listening, Charles,
yes,
in all the elections I have contested, the opposition, all the opposition parties have fielded candidates, and they do field candidates in all constituencies in Kampala. Katana will tell you there is no constituency in Kampala that NOP won, and won because they were the only ones fielding a candidate. That shouldn't bother us. What should bother us is the conduct of the state and the absence of the electoral commission. I remember in 2005, 2006, 2001, I think, when Aziz Kasujia, the late, was in charge of elections. Because of the violence of, at that time it was Presidential Protection Unit in Rukunjiri, he wrote to President Museveni, I still have that letter, and he said, if you don't remove the military in Rukunjiri, I am going to fail to organize this election. But this electoral commission of a judge of High Court, they should have had a press of Court of Appeal. They should have had a press conference today to condemn what happened in Kawempe, because this is their exercise. How can a judge begin beating, the way they grabbed Narukora from a motorcycle, they nearly killed the guy, threw him down, because that was, to the NRM, the appropriate group of joint anti-terrorism to go and police a by-election. And because that is their training, they really descended on the people. I saw the journalist. It's just by the grace of God that they didn't kill him. He's now in Zambia. He went there to do his work as a journalist, and he's beaten because these guys who are covering their faces, they have removed the name tags. They want to wreak havoc without being identified by the public. That's why they will begin with journalists, because they are the ones who are going to transmit those images when they are brutalizing people. So for me, Charles, that's what is bothering me. But parties presenting, they can present as many as 1,000. It doesn't bother me.
I have heard references. Sometimes they say in Kenya, for example, the opposition, the political parties in the opposition always lost to President Daniel Arap Moi, not because he was popular, but because they splintered their share of the vote so much that they would allow...
The election in Kenya you're talking about, Moi won by 37%.
Yes.
In Uganda here, we are lucky Museveni doesn't cheat the same way like it happens in Rwanda, where the result is 99%. But Museveni will make sure.
In the Rwanda elections they cheated.
Yeah, there are no elections in Rwanda. As far as I am concerned, there are no elections in Rwanda. Here there are elections, but they are cheated. Even if you present one candidate, be sure that Museveni will cheat that one candidate, and he will get above the constitutional requirement of 51%.
50 plus 1.
50 plus 1. He will get it.
Plus 1.
I mean, I was at conference center that time before it became Serena, when the vice to Aziz Kasujia was announcing results. The results for Machindia East, the total number of votes was higher than the total registered population.
Do you still have those numbers? We need to review them. Let me take a message from
Kakoza
Samuel.
They were even embarrassed. They had
Luwero.
rejected it. They attempted to remove it. They couldn't.
Some people like say, throwing.
But that was a matter in court. If you remember, for opponent.
It can go to court doesn't mean it was right.
No, that's what they did. I was not the only journalist available.
Kakoza Samuel in Luwero says, despite all the challenges, President Museveni has secured a good place among the Democrats. So far, 10 people have been nominated for Kawempe North, by-election. This shows the confidence people have in the democratic process. What happened yesterday was done by indisciplined officers who will face the law. Greetings to Mr. Fono and Honorable Semuju. That's Kakoza Samuel in Luhero. Ken Mutenyo says, in 2021, 10 contestants competed with a combined vote of 66,038. The top 4 candidates got a total of 60,000 votes, 89%. Seginya is dead, Kidandala is out of the country, Tom Lasenge is not competing.
Tom Kasenge.
He wrote
Tom
Lasenge.
Kasenge was the NRM candidate in the last election.
He wrote Lasenge. Kasenge is not competing, just like Latif Sebagala. This means that the 41,197 votes Seginya got are for all to fight for. The only former contestant in is Mutazindwa, who got 2,247 votes. I request NBS to also organize a candidates debate in English. There is no candidate in the by-election with a block vote. Foot soldiers have rejected the candidate their party put forward. DP has the best candidate for Kawempe in OHT where Kasacha Henry is doing a kalango. So tell Honorable Matembe that Uganda opted for a multi-party system. There is no political party called opposition. The leading opposition party didn't initiate any unity talks. That's Ken Mutenyo. From someone else here, Waninda Wilson says, yeah, he's watching the show and he's in Uganda. Waninda, thank you for watching the show. I have Job Richard Matua. I think this is an assistant RCC for Arua. He says, the brutality meted on council areas in Nalukala was unnecessary and should strongly be condemned by everyone. NRM is a pro-people government with a philosophy of winning hearts and minds of the people. Security forces should at most restrain themselves from unleashing such actions on non-violent people. The country needs harmony, otherwise we may unconsciously invite violence from the brutalized citizens. We all have a duty to maintain the relative peace and stability in this country. Uganda must remain peaceful in this region of turmoil. That's Job Richard Matua, his assistant RCC, Arua City.
That's a sensible comment from an RDC.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll be discussing the proposed amendment